podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Couple of times today I've thought I could do with a hug, but apart from that, it's been alright. I mean, I got a lot of love for Sir Alex, as we'll talk about throughout the course of the show, but also all things must pass. This is the fundamental nature of existence.
Well, yes, of course. We spoke about Sir Alex not long ago. It's funny. So for a very long time, I was insisting that summer 2013 was when he was about to retire. And then I was clearly totally wrong about that. Except not, but it would appear that I'd been totally wrong. And then, and not a week ago, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, we talked about Sir Alex, and I said, "Does this look like a man who's about to retire?" Absolutely not. It's the last thing from his mind. Of course, he was blowing smoke in our eyes once again. I mean, how many times has he done it? In his programme notes for the match against Chelsea, he said, "This isn't title number 20, it's the start of another 10 years of success, and I intend to be around for it." I mean, paraphrasing, but something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one, because, you read that in the aftermath of this and it's kind of clear that he's moving upstairs and that's what he's on about. But, we've sort of had a pop at Fergie a lot over the years for effectively lying to the fans by lying to the press, because that's how he communicates with the fans, and he sort of lost sight of that and just sees it as lying to the press. But this was just lying directly to our faces, well, not to our faces, but just the medium of print is clearly not a medium in which he feels compelled to be honest, because whether it was kind of strictly speaking true or not, it certainly wasn't honest in spirit. And I've seen a lot of people say, oh, mind games to the last, that wily old Fergie, but I just think I don't really get there's no benefit in that. What was he trying to accomplish? Why he didn't have to address that subject at all. Seems really odd thing to do in his last set of programme notes before the announcements.
Well, it does, yes. I mean, yeah, you're right, he didn't have to address it. Of course, there's some more formal rules around this kind of thing, because he's a senior employee of the club. He's not an executive director or anything like that, or yet. It looks like he will be, but so there are some rules that govern the announcements to the stock exchange and all that kind of thing. So you can understand why the club would control the announcement, yeah, but he directly and proactively went out and addressed the subject in his programme notes last week, and it was just a flat-out lie, because of course these things take months of succession planning. He didn't wake up one day and go, you know what, I feel like retiring today. And I mean, he's given interviews through the season as well. So anyway, I mean, it's Fergie to the last, I suppose. But I don't think we should kick off on a negative note, really. There's an awful lot of good things. It's almost impossible to consume all the media about him and digest it into one narrative, isn't it? There are so many nuances, conflicts, contradictions with this man who's won, depending on how you count it, 30 plus, or in fact, if you add everything in terms of his Scottish trophies as well, 49 trophies in total over his managerial career. I mean, it's an incredible achievement and an incredible man, and I mean that in many different ways.
There's no question that he's a complex character, but he's also easily the greatest football manager of all time. Easily. The eras he spanned, the constant reinvention of himself as a manager and the team that he's managed. I mean, the success he had before United, imagine Aberdeen winning the Scottish Premier League. Nobody apart from Celtic or Rangers has won it since he left Scotland.
Well, quite. So I was having a debate today about Ferguson's successor, and someone said to me, well, yeah, where was Ferguson when he joined United? You're not judging this by the same stick, basically. But hang on a minute. I looked through his record. He'd won 3 Scottish titles, 4 Scottish Cups, 3 Scottish League Cups, the European Cup Winners' Cup, and the European Super Cup, with a club that gets sort of less than 20,000 in gates, yeah. Right? From Scotland. That's incredible. Now, talk about overachievement, and we'll get onto it later, but I can make a good argument to say that David Moyes hasn't overachieved. But Ferguson doing all of that with Aberdeen was incredible, unbelievable. No one has done it since.
No, absolutely. No one's done it since at any club of an equivalent scale either, not just in Scotland. but there's not really anywhere in the world where that's happened since, as far as I can think. And you talked last week about how there was no one that's ever added more value to a company and been rewarded as like relatively little for it as Sir Alex. Not that, as you said, not that the rewards are insubstantial, but just that relative to the value added, they're insubstantial. And I mean, his Aberdeen career is proof of the level of added value. I mean, I'm really happy he gets to have a retirement, because it would have been really sad if he'd like died on the job and never had an experience of a kind of slightly less pressurized life, because although he would have loved, obviously absolutely kind of loved and thrived off the pressure, clearly, because otherwise you don't become Sir Alex, it must take an enormous toll. And, it's the way the story's broken over the week has been, it's kind of come out in bits and drabs, hasn't it? Like, the Mirror broke this story that he was going to have, I think it was the Mirror, going to have this hip operation, and it was going to mean that he was out for a few weeks at the beginning of the season. And you wonder if that actually turns out that was true. And then Red Issue all day yesterday were saying it's happening today, weren't they?
Yeah, well, actually, they've been saying it for some time, yeah.
And then, so at about 10 o'clock last night, it started to really gather pace. And then this morning, it was pretty clear. There was all sorts of rumours. There was rumours like David Moyes is going to be in charge of the first team until Fergie comes back from injury, at which point Moyes will be the assistant. All these really elaborate, convoluted theories. But then in the end, it was pretty cleanly done. Sir Alex releases a statement at 9:30 this morning saying, that's it, I'm off, cheers and that. And then throughout the course of the day, it became increasingly apparent that David Moyes, I mean, as we record this, David Moyes hasn't been announced as manager of Manchester United, so it's possible that you'll be watching Mourinho at a press conference just after having listened to this, laughing at all the stuff we say about Moyes today. But right now, it looks pretty much inevitable that David Moyes is the next Man United manager.
Well, yeah, and just going back to the retirement piece, I mean, obviously he said about the 2002 retirement that it was an absolute disaster. Of course, it ruined United's season. He was determined not to have that done again. So I guess that's why there's all the cloak and daggers and why it's come out in the way it has. And, probably got leaked a little bit earlier than they were planning. They were probably planning a formal statement rather than the leak coming out of Rio Ferdinand. I mean, the squad at the golf day. And so that's changed a little bit. But about the retirement, so Ferguson tells this story about his father and his father having retired after working in the dockyards for years and years and years. And a week after he retired, he got diagnosed with cancer. And, that has clearly played out in Ferguson's mind over the last decade since his first retirement, and probably actually very clearly in that decision to unretire. So he equates retirement with falling ill, and so it's interesting you say about how he'll keep himself busy. Yes, he'll be a director, but he's not going to be on the training ground at 6 a.m. like he does now. He won't have the pressure and all the stuff, the admin and stuff that he does deal with, because he doesn't do the actual hands-on training. He won't be having to do the analysis and watch the videos and meet the agents and all of that kind of stuff. He's going to have more time to race horses, I guess, and do the various charity stuff he does. But it's going to be a shock, I'd say. A massive shock to him personally. I hope he doesn't drop dead. In many ways, I'd rather he drop dead on the pitch doing the job than drops dead in his house in a couple of weeks' time, because his body just gives up after all these years of fighting with every sinew to get the next victory.
Yeah, and it's genuinely a problem. You see it all the time. People sort of collapse after. It's the exaggerated version of how, if you work really hard and then you have a week off and you kind of haven't had any downtime before the week off, you're going to be pretty sure to catch that cold. You know what I mean? It's that thing that always happens. And retirement can be that on a grand scale for a person that's lived a life like Sir Alex has. So he's definitely going to have to be careful on how he manages the transition to a quieter life. And, one of the things that he clearly wants to do is be extremely invested in the club, and Sir Bobby's not going to last forever, is he? And Sir Alex has got a role to play in that regard, doesn't he? That sort of senior grandfather figure of the club.
He has, although, of course, he's been so close to the execution of whatever happens with the club that it's slightly different. It's significantly different from what Sir Bobby does. And Charlton had some time away from the club between being a player and becoming a director of the club as well. So, no, we can talk about his looming shadow, and we've done before. That is going to play a significant part. I don't think it'll be enough. This guy has been in football since he was like 14.
Yeah, Absolutely.
You know, it's not short of 60 years in the game, and suddenly he won't be on a day-to-day basis. So that's going to be a big shock for him. But look, we should do some retrospective because I feel like it. I mean, it's all obvious. I was thinking about, you go through in your mind a bullet point list of what it is that was good and bad about Fergie, and I came up with my mind, a good silverware, like lots of it all the time. The focus on youth at different points in his career. I wouldn't say it's a universal at all, because at times he really hasn't done that. And actually in the last couple of seasons, it's for all that he says about youth, is actually a fairly old side. But from the Fergie fledglings in the late 80s to the class of 92 onwards, you know, there's been a good emphasis on that. And he's trusted. And that, I think that's been in the modern era, that doesn't happen very often. And he's been a pivotal part of that. He's completely changed the club. So the complete I don't just mean financially and commercially and stuff like that, but that's all fallen out of the success United had. But the professionalism, so he came to a club with a bunch of drinking, the training methods, his focus on science and modern, and people don't give him much credit for this, but you know, strong focus on data and medical staff, and the legacy at Carrington. They just spent 20 odd million bigging up the facilities at Carrington, so he's going to leave a massive legacy there. So there's there's his legacy encompassing all that in terms of how transformative what he's done has been to this institution, you know, and then he's going to leave a pretty strong squad. English champions, okay, it's not the strongest in Europe, but compared to what it was when he came, it's not even the same ball game, is it, in terms of depth of quality of squad? So that's all the good stuff. And then there's the bad stuff, but we'll get on to that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the bad stuff can be summed up pretty quickly, and it is a problem when it comes to the legacy. But I think it'll be forgotten, and I think it's sad that he's been part of the Glazer era and part of the rampant commercialism of United. But I think the way it's played out and his decision to retire now, I mean, we've basically survived the worst of Glazonomics, right? We've weathered the worst of the storm of that, as far as I understand it, in terms of the combination of the club getting quite fortunate and all that stuff. So he's kind of left at the right time in that sense. And so I think hopefully we can concentrate a little bit more on the positive and the sort of incredible, awe-inspiring legacy that he leaves. As you say, a club transformed from top to bottom. And yet, everything you hear about the club is that it runs as a family club, you know. Tea ladies are the same tea ladies that they've been for years and all that kind of stuff, you know. Fergie's had the same secretary the whole time. There's a close-knit community in that club. And, you know, the teams as well, the conspicuous team spirit, the fact that, you know, have you ever read the Secret Footballer book? No, but you know the columns, right?
Yeah.
They basically always say, essentially, God, footballers are terrible, football's a complete nightmare, everyone's really horrible and backbiting and stupid. Oh, except at Man United, where everything basically runs smoothly. And, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but it sort of does happen a bit in that book. I want to talk a bit about emotions, if I may, because that's a subject I'm very interested in. It's been really interesting to see people's emotions today. Obviously, like, people are shocked and sad and all those kinds of things. And some people really, really, really shaken by it. No doubt people that are listening to this who were really sort of affected by it in quite a primal way. And, you know, I made this joke about David Moyes is coming and, you know, this is your new dad, David. You have to do what he says now. There is something about that. He's an incredibly paternal figure. I was going to say patriarchal, but I mean paternal, in a sport which really represents paternity to a lot of people. A lot of people's really deep connections with football are either come at an early age through a connection with their father or exist as a kind of replacement for that. This is super Freudian or whatever, but you know, it's how I think about these things. And Ferguson is really a father figure, and so I'm basically what I'm getting at is I'm not surprised that people were really shaken up by it. How did you feel about it?
Well, if Ferguson's the father figure, does that make Kathy the mother figure? And if this is Freudian, do we all really want to sleep with her?
Well, you do talk about that quite a lot, so, you know.
Well, I mean, hey, is Ferguson a father figure? I don't want to brush over the bad stuff, but we'll get there. You know, because I can't help but address it with any eulogy I give to Ferguson. Is he a father figure? He's been a father figure for an era in the club. for sure. He's the man that has defined it. But I kind of see him as an old-fashioned 1950s father figure. He's the father that was sometimes absent, and he's the father that would beat you if you were naughty. He's also the father that taught you great things, you know. There's a sense of nostalgia if you think about Ferguson and a father figure. He's not the modern day father. He's not modern dad like Arsene Wenger or something like that.
Love it. But he's adapted his fatherly style. If you look at Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, he recognised that he had to be a different kind of father to Cristiano Ronaldo. And he was that. Ronaldo says he never saw the hairdryer, and that's probably not quite true, but he was definitely arm round the shoulder, everything will be all right, Dad, to Cristiano, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I think he was like grandfather to Cristiano. Cristiano the orphan, and Ferguson played the grandfather for him. So I think that was a little different. But you're right, he did adapt his style over the years, and that's one of the great assets that Ferguson's got. He adapted his management style, he adapted his tactical style. United went from a up and atom, let's attack with everybody, to a much more sophisticated unit over the years, and as a result often not as exciting, but we were on his kind of man management style and his personal style, and that has changed. Maybe he got a bit softer, but father figure, I think he's the kind of father of this era, this epoch at United, and I think it'll be very different from now on. It doesn't really matter who comes in. I think even with someone with a very similar management style wouldn't be able to have the same kind of effect on the club. And, we've talked before about his kind of all-encompassing view. And part of that was myth, of course, but part of it was true. Part of it was about checking up on players, and part of it was about knowing all the 12-year-olds at the club and all the kids coming up through the academy and understanding every part of the club, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of had to change, didn't it? Because the club got so big. But he's kind of kept some of that going.
Right, well, the club did get big. I mean, remember in the late 80s when Michael Knighton put in the bid, it was £10 million, and the Glazers wouldn't accept a £2 billion offer now. So that gives you an idea of the huge change in scale around the club. I mean, it's not just about the number of people through the turnstiles, it's everything that goes with it. United now a media entity that's registered in the Cayman Islands and listed on New York Stock Exchange, and when Ferguson took over, it was basically owned by the Edwards family as a plaything.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you feel? Like, what was your sort of emotional reaction to hearing the news?
Actually, it was pretty neutral. In a way, I didn't feel very surprised because I was expecting the unexpected.
Right.
I know that's an oxymoron, but I figured this would be the way it came out one day. Didn't expect it this summer, actually, after all. Yeah. After all my previous belief that it definitely was, I'd changed my mind. That's how convincing he was with the smokescreen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, a little bit of, it's not a surprise. A little bit, yeah, why not? He's going out on a high, so that's good. Imagine that City had romped away with the league and hadn't been quite so rubbish this season. We'd have a very different feeling about him going. He probably wouldn't have wanted to go, would he?
No.
I mean, there are stories floating around that he'd considered quitting last summer, but for the way City won the title, he just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And a little bit of trepidation because I think it is going to be a momentous summer for the club. As I said at the top of the show, we've got a new CEO. We're going to have a new manager now. There'll be some new faces in the playing squad. There'll be some players going, potentially some very big ones as a result of all these changes. And so it is a summer of upheaval in many ways for the club, and so that gives you pause for thought, doesn't it? Because if you put it in that context, we shouldn't expect a great season next year. I think things are going to change quite significantly. Get your mind around that now, then we'll all be able to accept a bit easier when it goes a little bit pear-shaped next year.
Yeah, if it does. I mean, obviously signings are a huge part of that, but I think we'll come to the post-Fergie era a bit later in the show. For now, the Fergie era, you asked me to have a bit of a think about a few different things before we started recording. And one of them was Sir Alex's, the best 11 of Sir Alex's time. And we did this a little while ago when some of the millions of milestones we've covered while we've been doing the show, because it's been a milestone every 3 months, hasn't it, while we've been doing the show, basically. So I think we both have Schmeichel in goal, right? That's pretty clear.
That's a given, yeah.
I think I have him in goal. He's definitely the best goalkeeper I've ever seen. I've never seen a better goalkeeper than Schmeichel. He may well be the best there ever has been. So right back, pretty obvious choice, really. Mini Fergie himself, the greatest pundit that football television's ever seen, the one and only Gary Neville, a man who throughout his career worked harder and harder and harder and harder to just get better at every aspect of the game.
He did, yeah. Fergie once said that if he was an inch taller, he'd be the best centre-back in Britain, which was an interesting assessment of Gary Neville. Yeah, he was a fantastic right-back, Neville, and definitely Ferguson's best right-back, the only choice.
Yeah. Now, left back, there is potentially some alternative choices to this. I was talking with Man United Youth on Sunday, very nice to meet Nick, and he was saying that he would have Patrice Evra in his greatest Fergie 11 left back for the heights of, like, if you take him and my choice, Dennis Irwin, at their very, very best, Patrice Evra might nudge it, but you don't see Patrice Evra's very, very best as often as you saw Dennis Irwin's consistent excellence and solidity. One of the unsung heroes of the Fergie era, but it's got to the point where, much like Michael Carrick, he's been called an unsung hero so often he's now a sung hero.
Yeah, I mean, Owen would be my choice as well. I mean, right back playing at left back, the fact he scored all those goals from free kicks, his leadership, his ability to play within different systems, the number of years with which he excelled as well. So he edges it. Not far off. You know, Patrice has been absolutely brilliant in the sort of 2008-2009 era. You'd argue that he was the best left back in the world. It'd be hard to argue that Irwin was ever the best left back in the world, but the best Fergie left back for me, Irwin, yeah.
Now we come to genuinely difficult. I guess we do two at once here. I think basically what it comes down to is that Rio and Vidic are not only were they the best partnership, but they're also the best two defenders. I'd have both of them in the side. Absolutely unstoppable force of Nemanja Vidic at his best, and Rio just making everyone that's ever played alongside him look magnificent. Rio is one of my favourite defenders of all time, let alone Ferguson era defenders. Obviously, many honourable mentions, but perhaps you'll pick someone other than Rio and Vidic in your centre-back partnership.
Yeah, super difficult, this one. I mean, I definitely have Rio because of the class over the last 10 years, and I think he's been truly outstanding. And the fact that he's in the PFA Team of the Year shows his enduring quality. At his peak, he was absolutely in one of the two best central defenders in the world. And the other one's really difficult for me because the influence of Stam on that 1999 team was absolutely massive. And Vidic was arguably the reason that United managed to win that second European Cup in 2008. You know, United had a very, very solid defensive performance through that season. And you talk about the away performance at Roma that season as being one of the finest ever. I think Michael Cox from Zona Marking said it's probably the finest ever United performance away from home, something like that. And Vidic was a huge part of that. But for me, I just pick Stam. I thought Stam was just completely commanding for a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is we're splitting the hairs that are not on Jaap Stam's head, aren't we, at this point? Bruce and Pallister both deserve honourable mentions. I think it's very difficult to compare because they really do. I mean, it's just this whole thing about the number of footballing eras that Ferguson has spanned. Jaap Stam feels like a very modern defender, but Bruce and Pallister feel like they're from a bygone era. You know, if you look at the levels of fitness, compare Steve Bruce's physique with Rio Ferdinand's, for example.
You're saying Brucey didn't rip a six-pack?
Exactly. Brucey ripped plenty of six-pack open. But they were both phenomenal defenders, weren't they? And of course, Bruce chipped in with tons and tons of goals.
I just don't think they compare in terms of quality.
Yeah.
So certainly Bruce didn't. I mean, you know, fine defender and all that, but from a bygone era. So yeah, for me, those two. In midfield, I mean, I guess you could have some arguments around the periphery, but any best Fergie 11 that doesn't contain Giggs, Scholes and Keane is ridiculous, frankly. Yeah. And then you might argue about who would play on the right wing. Personally, I'd say Ronaldo. I mean, of course, he played some of the latter part of his United career up front, basically, and all of his career at Real Madrid in attacking, whether it's off the left or through the centre. But I guess he came to stardom as a right winger, so I'd pick Ronaldo. Some might pick Beckham. I don't know what you would.
Obviously those three easily pick themselves, although a huge honourable mention for Brian Robson, an absolutely magnificent player. Magnificent. You know, we kind of underestimate Robbo because he comes from a bygone era, but he had absolutely everything. He was just just a complete tower, and it's brilliant that the Fergie era started early enough that Robson managed to win the Premier League, because he really definitely deserved not to finish his career without that Champions medal.
More than Steven Gerrard ever got. Just thought to throw that one in there. Yeah, absolutely. It must be very close, but Scholes and Keane, I mean, has there ever been a better central?
Yeah.
Well, there probably has been, but in the modern era, there are not many central midfield partnerships. And in an era that was just coming into what you might call the modern era, you know, where it became fashionable to play three through the middle a lot, they still dominated, you know, whether it was against two or three. Keane was two players in one, and so was Scholes.
Yeah. You got their 1.5 each at least. On the right, I would have David Beckham for reasons that I will come on to in just a minute. Ronnie, I'm not going to argue with anyone that has Ronnie. It's just about the balance of the team. That's what I was thinking about, the role that they all play.
That quartet, compare it with United's midfield now, compared to that quartet at their peak, I mean, we just wouldn't live with them, would we?
No, but I would have Carrick on the bench because, you know, I think Carrick has been absolutely central to the end of Ferguson's era. He's been vital. I mean, you know, I was at the Chelsea game and I was really sad that he wasn't involved, but we were a shambles in central midfield, as we are so often without him. But he's obviously not going to get Keane or Scholes out the side, and in fact, he wouldn't even be my next choice because I'd have Robson. But I do think Carrick is the best midfielder of the last 5 years of Fergie's career.
Well, yes, that's not saying an awful lot.
No, he's basically saying he's better than Anderson. That's what I'm saying, basically, at this. And then, okay, so right, well, one of my reasons for picking Beckham is because up front, I think in the number 9 role, I'm going to have Ruud van Nistelrooy, just for sheer insane capacity as a predator and, I mean, just all-round magic, brilliant, amazing goaliness, as in the scoring of goals, not being a goalie. And in the number 9 role, I mean, it's not the number 9 role, it's the number 7 role in this particular case, because you can make whatever arguments you like about who the actual proper best players that have played for Sir Alex are. But the best player that's played for Sir Alex is Eric Cantona.
Oh, for a minute there, I thought you weren't going to have him. Phew. Because we were going to have a falling out. So, yeah, of course, up front, you have to have Cantona. And I would pick Van Nistelrooy as well. I mean, Rooney has been an absolutely brilliant player at times for United. And if you take the whole of Van Nistelrooy's time for United, the last season or so wasn't very good. But for 3 seasons, he was absolutely amazing. In 3 seasons of a not brilliant United side. He scored tons of goals. I think he got like over 100 goals in his first 3 seasons with United. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's more than 100, I'm pretty sure. And Rooney can't match that, but he's been brilliant in a different way. So, you know, it was a toss-up for me, and I was thinking about this, but I would have Cantona and Van Nistelrooy up front. And then, of course, you know, pretty magnificent bench. I mean, the only other goalkeeper that's actually been any good in the Fergie era has been Van der Sar, so I don't think there's any argument about that one. You know, unless you want to go for Bosnich or Taibbi.
What about Dave? I'd have Van der Sar over Dave, but not in 5 years. In 5 years, if Fergie had been there for another 5 years, De Gea might have been in with a shout.
Ah, yes, but you know, we're not looking to the future here. We're looking at the past.
No. Yeah.
This is a nostalgic show for the time being, anyway. And I mean, I picked Stam, you picked Vidic. I mean, maybe our substitutes would be the other way around. I'd have Vidic on the bench, maybe, or maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. I mean, Robson would have to be there, and I guess I'd have Beckham on the bench because I picked Ronnie in the side. And would I have Rooney on the bench? I guess so. I mean, depends. Are we in 1986 era when you only got 3 substitutes, or are we in 1999 era when you got 5 substitutes, or are we in 2013 era where you got 7?
I want 7. So.
All right. So in that case, I could have Rooney on the bench, and I could probably have another midfielder, and I haven't really thought about who that might be. And then, of course, I mean, he might not have been the best player that United have ever had, or in the Fergie era but the best substitute United have ever had is Ollie. He'd have to be on the bench.
Absolutely no question whatsoever, because, you know, we're picking the best player for the role, and Ronaldo's a better player than David Beckham, but I want a proper right winger to ping crosses into Ruud, and I want a proper substitute on the bench. I'm gonna have Ronnie on my bench. Solskjaer, Robson, Ronaldo, Stam, Evra maybe, I don't know. It's hard, isn't it, to pick a bench? It's really difficult, but...
It is. I've got one left, so maybe I'd pick Evra, or, you know, I mean, as a wild card, maybe Bebe.
Yeah, Bebe. Why not? Why not chuck a bit of comedy in there as well? I don't know. Oh, of course I know who's in my last substitute role. Of course I do. It's what I would do in Championship Manager. The man who can play anywhere on the park. In fact, I don't need Van der Sar on the bench because I'm going to have Big John O'Shea on my bench.
Hey, Big John O'Shea. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, there you go. Fergie's greatest 11. I think that's a pretty bloody good side, whichever way you pick it.
It's not bad. All right, so you asked now, I mean, this is impossible, Ed. You said your favourite single moment of Sir Alex Ferguson's career. Did you have some? What's yours?
Well, I know what mine is, yeah. Mine is, and Solskjaer has won it. That's mine. That brings a tear to the eye even today. Just, spine-tingling amazingness that has never been repeated again.
I'm losing it here. I was thinking about that versus the 2008 Champions League final, and I'm a bit of a weirdo, right? I acknowledge that I have a very different relationship with football than most people. But once we got to the end of extra time without a winner in the Champions League of 2008, I didn't really even care that much anymore. Because what I really wanted was for us to be better than Chelsea. And I felt like for large periods of that game, we were better than Chelsea. And then for large periods, they were better than us. And at that point, it was 6-5 and pick 'em, as they say. The fact that the penalty shootout was so close was really, it was decided by such fine margins. But it was, in the end, an incredible moment watching John Terry fall over.
Well, that's my Schadenfreude moment.
The other moment that I really want to talk about is the Steve Bruce header, with Brian Kidd going nuts on the wing, and that was 20 years ago, almost to the day that Brucey got Hull promoted, which was quite a nice way of celebrating.
For a short period I sat in the South Stand. I'm sure I've said this before. But for a season or so I sat there and really near the bench, and so I got a very close-up view of Brian Kidd on his knees, praying to whatever gods that made that header go in, before someone shoved me and I fell over a bunch of seats.
That was just insane.
But yeah, an incredible moment. Still not as good as, and Solskjaer has won it.
Defining moment of Ferguson's era in charge of Manchester United is that, and Solskjaer's won it. And Manchester United have reached the promised land, goes the commentary, and it was the culmination of everything, and it was such a profound moment in time, and the fact that we have done it so often under Sir Alex. The last minute winner, the late goal, that season was one after another of those. That was not a one-off fluke. That is such a perfect Alex Ferguson moment that, whatever it is he did to his players to make them have that belief that they should and could keep going until it was absolutely all over, just magic. So I can't see beyond that moment myself either. And we come to, I guess, by necessity, we've got to make this a different choice, because you could say it's the same thing. But favourite goal, that's an awful lot to choose from, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's the moment, isn't it? But if it was just in terms of favourite goal, just for the fact that it was a goal, the aesthetic of it, I was having trouble with this one, but I think I've got a top three.
Okay.
I think. This is a difficult one, mind you. This is a difficult one. So I think in third place is that long-range half volley from Eric, where he controls and whacks it in against Arsenal in the run-in in that 1996 season, where it was not on for a while, and it was. I think in second place is Eric's chip. And in joint first place...
Cheats!
is Ryan Giggs' Maisie dribble.
Oh my God, I literally forgot that goal when I was thinking about this.
Yeah, and Paul Scholes' volley against Aston Villa.
Okay.
Direct from the corner.
Okay.
Where he bangs it in off the crossbar.
Amazing. All right, my top three, I'm going to go for... Okay, yeah, I'm going to go for all different goals. I think I would have had that Eric chip in my goals. Number three... Scholes against Panathinaikos. The best team goal that United have scored in the Fergie era.
Good shout.
Absolutely incredible, and kind of epitomises just how good that team was as a team. Panathinaikos, obviously not the world's strongest opposition, but still a magnificent goal. And then against the world's strongest opposition in 2008, those two Champions League semi-final ties were so intense, and that goal from Scholes in that Champions League semi-final. So two Scholesy goals there in those positions, and then I don't know, can't do it. I can't do different goals to you. I'm going to have to go for Eric against Sunderland. Just absolutely era-defining.
There's the breakaway goal against Arsenal in the Champions League semi-final as well.
What a goal.
Which Ronnie to Park to Rooney, Rooney to Ronnie, and a goal. What a magnificent goal that was too.
Yeah, that game was incredible because we sort of, Arsenal we we still rated Arsenal at that point, and we just absolutely destroyed them, didn't we? All right, and then your last category that you asked us for is best quote, and again, something that there's been an awful lot of over the time that Ferguson's been in charge, because he's always been good for a soundbite, hasn't he?
Yeah, and that's why, even though he's been at war with the media for 27 years, they keep quoting him and printing him, because how many memes has he created before a meme even existed? Fergie time, squeaky bum time, football, bloody hell. Yeah. And there's been quite a few more as well. I love the quote where he's talking about Italians. The irony in this, he says, when Italians tell me it's pasta, I look under the sauce. They were the inventors of the smokescreen. Are you sure, Ferguson? Are you sure? There was his rant he had about Sebastian Veron. Yeah. And I'm nay effing talking to you. He's an effing great player. Yous are effing idiots. He stomped out. Loved that one. Thought that was brilliant. And what did he say about Ryan Giggs? Where he said he floated like a dog chasing a piece of silver paper in the wind or something like that.
Beautiful. Yeah, Football Bloody Hell is my favourite because it's just such pure emotion, but an honourable mention to a quote that does the rounds in the story of some United function when all the players turn up, it's suit and tie, absolutely mandatory, and this is at the height of Fergie, the disciplinarian running Manchester United, and he comes in and a few of the lads see that he's going to see that Eric's wearing a shirt and jeans or whatever, everyone else is suited and booted, and they expect Fergie, he's going to give Cantona the what for, but he just turns to him and goes, he's some man, that Cantona. I love that. I just love it. I love the way he felt about Cantona. Beautiful.
And for the most bizarre quote, there have been a few, but that one about Rooney and the cow, and sometimes you look in the field and you think the cow's better, but really the cow's much better over here, and our cow's better than their cow. And all of that.
Lovely. I mean, I really love him. That's the thing. I do. I really feel really warm towards him. And partly, I suppose, that's just because his actions... I'm lucky enough by accident of fate to be a Manchester United fan at a time when the greatest manager of all time has been managing the club, winning things left or right. But he has a lot to speak positively of him as a man as well. He's helped so many people and done so much kind of kindness outreach, and he has somewhere mixed in him, he has some, principles and believes in things which are important and good, and, it's unfortunate that some of his actions could be seen as very self-serving and all of the kind of Glazer stuff, because it makes it much more complex, but I cannot deny that I love him.
Well, there's a thin line between love and hate, as the cliche goes, and I've had an on-off relationship with Ferguson. There have been times when I've really disliked the man. Yeah. You've got to be honest about that one. Of course, one that's always ahead of his time, I suggested Ferguson should be retired in November 2005.
Paul Le Guen. Paul Le Guen makes David Moyes look like Sir Alex.
Well, no, Le Guen's actually won trophies. It had done at that time. A very bad choice, What can I say? Young and naive. Look, that was a culmination of pretty poor United side, some really dross football, and some vehement support of the Glazers, and the anger with the Glazers, some transference there, So, no, I'm not justifying myself, but at the time that felt like a very, very understandable position for me, And
yeah, absolutely.
Crosses over into my feeling about him and the Glazers. I think he supported something which is fundamentally wrong. You make all the arguments about money you like, and by the time the Glazers have finally cleared the debt or gone away, it'll have cost United $1 billion, around about, maybe even more, it depends whether they re-leverage after this, period of good financial health that seems to be coming up. So, in just pure financial terms, it's been terrible. In terms of the relationship between the club and the fans, it's broken. They broke it, and Ferguson supported them. And in fact, he went on the attack, and the amount of quotes about real fans would support the Glazers and all that kind of nonsense, and telling fans to head off and support Chelsea. So that kind of thing made him a very difficult person to like for me. And just his general demeanour with the press and some of the fallings out he's had with players and stuff like that, they've all contributed to a feeling that sometimes I didn't like him very much, At the same time, yeah, love him very much too. That article I wrote when I called for him to be resigned, and I said I love him very much, and it was the best thing for him and the club for him to go at that time. Turns out it wasn't the best thing, and there've been a bunch of other titles and the European Cup on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think your logic was impeccable at the time. I really do think that. And I think it's fine to have been wrong about that. And, you know, Rob Smythe wrote a very similar article maybe a season or two ago. And I think he was right as well. You know, I think history's proved him, it's a paradox. I'm saying history's proved him wrong, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't a perfectly reasonable conclusion to draw at the time. And I think what we've all done in the times we've written off Fergie is we've made the mistake of writing off Fergie. I mean, it's a pretty simplistic thing to say, but, you know, the whole cliche of like, oh, don't write off the Germans. It's like, just don't write off Fergie, because whatever it takes, he'll find a way to win. And one of the things about the Ferguson era is he has seen off, first of all, he overthrew Liverpool as a dominant force in English football, which was no mean feat whatsoever, and they contributed to their own downfall for sure. Then he's kind of dealt with an unprecedented challenge from Arsenal as they embraced this new modern football and played beautiful, wonderful, incredibly dynamic football. But no, Fergie outlived them, and actually there's, you know, he's seen a 7-year-long barren spell where Arsene Wenger couldn't even pick up a League Cup, you know. Then came Roman's billions and Jose, and it looked for a little while like that was going to be unassailable, but there's a reason we sing "You'll Never Win 3 in a Row" at Chelsea, and it's because Sir Alex wouldn't let it happen, and nowhere near able to match them on a financial scale. He managed to see off that challenge. Then City came along, and City, you know, it wasn't long enough to be an era. They just won it once, but he won it straight back. And I kind of thought if he'd had another 5 years, he'd see off City altogether. I'm sure they'll be back, as I'm sure Chelsea will. But he saw off all comers.
That's just incredible. Unprecedented. No one has been able to build and destroy again and see off so many challenges. And we talk about the Glazers and that sucked out all sorts of money from the club for a number of years, even though it was denied. But do you think if anyone else was in charge that United would have survived in quite the same way? I don't think so. Of course not. So in that sense, I'm going to contradict myself here, as well as being the guy who made it happen. He was a real catalyst, and he supported them. He was also the saviour of the club in that period as well.
And actually, you know, I mean, I think his support for the Glazers, if you can't see that his support for the Glazers undermines his legacy, then we can't have a conversation on the same level. There are certain prerequisites. We're disagreeing about what red is and what blue is here. You know, it's like, from my perspective, that is absolutely cast iron for sure. The way he acted at that time undermines his legacy overall, but the way I've always been unsure about how much that was his kind of, how much of it was just amoral and how much of it was about saying, okay, well, this is a kind of real politic here. This is the reality we're faced with. The club's best interests are served by stability. And I know that Ferguson will back himself to dig the club out of the hole. And he's absolutely done that. But, you know, we said we would talk about the Q3 financials last week and actually didn't really talk about them. They're not particularly interesting. But the club is in increasingly good financial health. And that's not because of the Glazers. That's because Ferguson has kept us incredibly successful in spite of the Glazers, and the TV deals boomed, which is very much partly because of Sir Alex's relentless success over the years. You know, he's contributed to the growth of English football as a whole, hasn't he?
Yeah, totally. You're right about many of those things. The Glazers have been very, very astute at leveraging what Ferguson has built, you know, and keeping United successful has enabled that brand to go around the world. And it's given a platform for all these brands that want to be associated with Manchester United and rub off on some of the glory to do that. You know, it couldn't have been done in quite the same way if this had been an unsuccessful club. If all the debt had translated into a lack of investment, a lack of success, like Arsenal, then we'd be doing Arsenal-level sponsorships, which is nowhere near, given their massive new Puma deal, which will be completely dwarfed by the new Nike deal when it comes out. You know, it'd be a completely different style of club, of course, you know. So I guess fans are thankful for all the glory that Ferguson's brought and all the great memories and all the great time. The Glazers should be thankful for filling their pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, you know, it's kind of weird that he's a big part of the last part of his career was all about, you know, financially at least, was about filling the pockets of a bunch of kind of parasites. But at the same time, he brought enormous joy, because Ferguson's actions have brought enormous joy to the fans during the Glazer era. The team has been unprecedentedly successful, which is mental, and some of that was luck. This is the other thing about, like, you know, there's a few key moments in Alex Ferguson's career, which I guess some of it genuinely just good fortune, but then also just an incredible opportunist. And actually his last great signing, Robin van Persie, classic example of pure opportunism, and he really was an opportunistic manager. He seized the moment brilliantly, Sir Alex. If you look back at this title run in that game that City lost, I can't remember who it was that they lost to, but we had a big game coming up midweek, and he still pulled out all the stops in the league because he saw the moment and he grabbed it. And that's a very Fergie thing to do. We've said so many times on this podcast that Ferguson's career is testament to what it means to be a good gambler. You know, that a good gambler is not somebody who never loses. A good gambler is somebody who wins more than they lose. And Ferguson's won way, way, way more than he's lost in those gambles.
You can argue that he's become less of a gambler over the years, but at times he's really benefited from that. I mean, earlier this season, United's crazy suicidal football, you know, that was a decision that he flipped it around after Christmas when he decided that the gamble was over and actually wanted to de-risk.
Yeah.
Champions League final, throwing 4 forwards on. There's so many examples where it's gone right for him, and some where it's gone disastrously wrong as well. But I think he's well ahead in the stakes, isn't he? And that's contributed to United's success. Of course, there's been fortune, but I think most of it's been created. There's definite fortune in 1999. But if a manager hadn't thrown all those forwards on and hadn't been able to prepare to risk all to win, then, you know, would United have got that luck?
No, absolutely. And you know, fortune favours the bold. A leap of faith is often rewarded. All these things which are cliches for a reason, because somehow fundamentally true to human experience. All right, so talking of gambles, Sir Alex isn't going to be manager of Manchester United next season. Someone else is.
No, say it ain't so.
And as we record this, it's kind of a gamble to spend ages and ages talking about it, but we're going to have to. And it's not much of a gamble, though, because currently betting has been suspended as David Moyes came into 1-50 on to be the next Manchester United manager.
Yes, well, he's going to be the next Manchester United manager. We'll release his podcast on Friday. He'll be announced on Thursday. And I'm personally gutted because I was hoping Mike Phelan would take the job.
It's more than Mike Phelan, in the words of Ed Barber. Hard not to be underwhelmed by the selection of David Moyes, although some aren't, and I am absolutely not writing him off. I think there's every chance that he has the right qualities to succeed at Manchester United, but there is also a very considerable chance that it's not going to work out for the big man. And, you know, I'm just going to act like he is already because it's sort of so much a done deal. He's our manager. I'm definitely going to be supportive of him. Definitely not going to be getting on his back after 6 months if results aren't going well.
Give it 8. No, look, I mean, look, we learned plenty from Ferguson's time that stability counts. I think it's a completely different era, though. So Ferguson got 4 years to win a trophy. Moyes certainly won't get that. But it's a very different club. You know, that was a club that was struggling financially, hadn't had success for years, had a very poor squad. Here, not struggling financially, not in the same way. Anyway, has a very high quality squad. Might not be the best in Europe, but that's a change in our expectations. So Moyes can't have a bedding in period, basically. He needs to be successful or pretty successful right from the start. So it needs to be challenging.
Yeah.
And I like you used the word underwhelming. It is underwhelming for me, and one of the reasons it's underwhelming is that objectively Moyes isn't qualified for the job, right? So hilariously, rereading some of the newspaper reports, the Guardian's Ferguson has resigned reports, so kind of factual news one, had a line in it that basically said something along the lines of, and the criteria for the selection of the next manager, extensive CV, extensive experience in Europe, and experience of running a large budget and a squad of star players. All of which rule David Moyes out of the job.
Yeah.
And that's my logic, right? And I think objectively he's not qualified, and there's something else at play here. You know, obviously Ferguson has kind of sponsored him, because if David Moyes is qualified for this job, there are 100 other managers throughout Europe who are too. Or there's another way of putting this. If United's peers are Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Juventus, Milan, would David Moyes get any of those jobs?
The counter-argument to that, for me, boils down to Fergie thinks he can do it. And, you know, when you give a job to somebody and you look at the CV, the most qualified person on the CV is not necessarily going to be the best person for the job. Running United is a different job to running Real Madrid or Barcelona or whatever. You know, it requires a different skill set, so it's not necessarily directly comparable. By the way, I don't actually disagree with anything whatsoever that you've said. I should make that very clear. I'm just saying the counter-argument is there's clearly something about Moyes that Sir Alex thinks means that he has the right personal characteristics and the right abilities to do the job. I think in his favour are his dealings in the transfer market. Generally speaking, his signings are, they favour him. You know, they're not all perfect, but they never will be. He's been really smart in the transfer market, quite often buying cast-offs from United, in fact, and he's done ever so well in the transfer market, and he's built a very decent Everton side. Now, as you pointed out, on average in his career at Everton have finished 8th in the Premier League, and on average they're 8th in the Premier League Money League table. So that's not an overachievement. This notion that he's punched way above the weight of Everton. I mean, Everton are historically one of the really big sides in English football, aren't they? I mean, they're not competing on the same level as the big boys financially in this crazy world we live in now, but they're not competing on the pitch front with them either. You know, they're about where they're supposed to be, and United are not where they're supposed to be. United are consistently either where they're supposed to be or ahead of where they're supposed to be, whereas Everton, generally speaking, where they're supposed to be or a bit below or a bit above, you know, very much at par.
Look, there are plenty of ways of looking at that. One is just the pure revenue. One is the wages, and they're about 8th or 9th, floated between them if you look over the last few years, in terms of their wage to turnover ratio. The other significant factor, of course, is that it's been topped up with debt and significant amounts of debt, and Everton do pay good wages for the amount of turnover they bring in. Actually, Moyes is on a very good wage indeed, you know, so he'll be earning very good money at Old Trafford. And that's the way Everton have managed to compete, by paying high wages but being smart in the transfer market. Is that what United need to do? I'd argue that he's coming into a completely different mindset and set of objectives now that he's not been tested for. So has he done that job that he'll need to do in terms of selecting some of the best players? Of course, he'll need to budget as well because, you know, it's the Glazer family and all of that. But, you know, there will be some bigger buys too, we suspect. He's not done that before. He's untested. Has he done anything in Europe? No, nothing at all. So untested there. Has he won any trophies? No, nothing at all. So untested there as well. Has he ever managed a squad of 30 internationals? No, completely untested there. So, you know, Ferguson may think he's got the raw qualities to do the job. But as we discussed earlier, Ferguson was more qualified than Moyes when he took the job, which was a much smaller job when Ferguson took it over.
That's it.
So the gap is massive here, right? And I don't think he's not comparable in terms of what the club is, and not comparable in terms of the CV. So this is a massive punt. I wouldn't mistake that at all. It is a massive punt because some of the key criteria for Moyes being successful are not there. It doesn't look like they've restructured the management structure either, right? They're not bringing in a director of football and just asking Moyes to be a coach. And there's some arguments about whether he would do a good job there as well. So, you know, I think this is it's a leap of faith, and I think it's a leap of faith based on personality mainly. And we'll see if it works out. He's going to get time, of course, and I think the Old Trafford crowd's pretty patient anyway, so I think he'll get plenty of time. You know, we've been used to Anderson for 6 years, so that's patience for you, because there's still people arguing with me about whether Anderson will come good or not after 6 years, you know, and very genuinely as well. So in 6 years' time, if Moyes has won absolutely nothing, United are 12th in the Premier League, there'll still be people going, yeah, well, we should wait and see whether he comes good or not.
I think actually the Old Trafford crowd is getting less patient. Like, there were genuinely people who were angered by how bad United were against Chelsea on Sunday, even though we've literally won the league 2 weeks before that. The game was just for fun, you know. Like, he played a bunch of people just to get the medals or just to get them playing time or whatever and have a bit of fun. But it was just so incredibly unimportant, that game. And yet there was still passionate anger from the fans, and I do think there is less patience than there was. I think the point that you made about the gap, like Ferguson, say he'd had equivalent success leading up to now, and now the United job with United the size it was, he would still be a better choice than Moyes. But on top of the fact that United is an infinitely bigger club, I mean, it's a big risk. One thing that at Giggs Bosun, who's been extremely Pro Moyes has pointed out in a pretty good article about Moyes. I don't agree with all of it, I have to say, but there's a couple of good points, and one of them is about youth development. Then there's been a willingness on Moyes' part to back youth and incorporate them with some signings and some more experienced players, and so that's pretty good. And ultimately, it's just so hard to assess, isn't it? I mean, I don't know about you, but we're having this conversation and I feel a bit like I'm in a weird bubble or something. It's like I can hear these words coming out of my mouth, but me and you are talking now about how David Moyes is going to do as Man United manager next season. This is not like some Twitter question we're answering. Who do you think might be in the running to take over from Sir Alex when he eventually finally pops his clogs or retires? This is really happening. David Moyes is Man United manager.
And every time I hear that, I get this kind of feeling of meh. And it's not good, actually. I want to be excited about it. And conceptually, actually, we talked about this a few weeks ago, didn't we? And someone completely misunderstood the point you were making when you said you'd embrace the new manager and be excited about it and had a go at me.
Oh, did they? I didn't see that.
Yeah. They had a go at me suggesting that I was being anti-Fergie. Interesting, yeah. But look, anyway, the point being is I can't escape this feeling of meh. Doesn't mean I won't support him, whatever that means in the modern era. I always think it's quite funny when people say, you should just support the team. Does that mean you're not allowed an opinion?
Yeah, because I, as I said, like, I'll back David Moyes, definitely, and give him plenty of time. But if I think he's made a mistake and we're recording one of these next year, I'm going to say, hey, I think that was a mistake. That doesn't, I just want to make this clear to everyone right now, that doesn't mean like I'm slagging him off or not getting behind the team or got to support the team, as the Seinfeld quote.
And there's some interesting dynamics with Moyes as well, because I think there will be plenty of cause for United fans to grumble. He is a man who switches the team around at Everton. And he plays tactics based on the opposition. Now that's another one that makes me kind of worried, because there's a lot of validity in doing that. Of course, you adjust what you're doing for the opposition, but he does it in this defensive manner. Everton are so often the underdogs, and it's not going to happen at United in the same way. It's save for a few massive matches in Europe. Really, he's got to find a style that United can impose on other teams. I mean, you look at the successful teams now. Barcelona, maybe their era is fading, coming into Bayern and the German clubs, who knows? But they all have a very distinct style that they impose on other teams. Now, this is not something Moyes has done at Everton, aside from the long ball. They play more long balls than Stoke. Anyone thinks he plays good football? They do. Fact.
By January the 4th, 2013, they'd scored more goals from open play than either Chelsea or City. So
yeah, that's because they launch it at Fellaini's head. He knocks it down and the little fella knocks it in.
It's worth pointing out, by the way, that all this discussion of like what next season's going to be like, massive headline on the Daily Mail. It's Daily Mail on Thursday this week. Just says Rooney out, Ronaldo in on the back page of the Daily Mail.
Yes, well, we'll see about the second one, because I think there's a lot of economics and politics around that one. It's hard to see Rooney staying.
Yeah.
They had a court case, these guys. It's not like they had a bit of a falling out in the dressing room or whatever. Yeah, they are enemies.
Apparently they're made up, but it's...
Yeah, they made up due to a settlement.
Yeah, yeah. In the settlement, it said you have to pretend to have made up in case Moyes becomes United manager. But yeah, I mean, you've got to think that's pretty crazy. So I've just had a tweet from someone about that picture. The tweet from @TalkOfTheCrowd saying letting Moyes have the cheat codes on for the first year. Fair enough. Good little introduction. I mean, if Ronaldo comes to United, all bets are off, right? We're having completely different discussions, aren't we? If Ronaldo comes.
Well, I mean, who knows? Because, of course, the big draw for Ronaldo was his relationship with Ferguson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so, of course, some of it was his relationship with the club, but he talks about Ferguson.
Yeah.
Very specifically. So would he come back to United with all the finances that would take with no Ferguson there? Does it make any economic sense? In that case, does Moyes know how to use him?
Well, you just stick him on the pitch and say, put that round thing in that big square thing over there. That's what you do, isn't it, with Ronaldo?
Yeah, Ronaldo has a bit of a strop. What does Moyes do? He can't bollock him. Ronaldo's bigger than Moyes, significantly bigger. Ronaldo's a world star, Moyes isn't. Yeah. There will be an asymmetric relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it works. And this is part of my uncertainty with Moyes. Maybe he'll prove us all wrong, and he'll come out and we'll find out he has the kind of personality to take on Manchester United. And he has the tactical thinking that will maybe even improve on Ferguson. I'd love to see that. And maybe we won't get the tombola anymore. And maybe he'll play beautiful football that he just could never do at Everton because he had limited resources. Maybe. Or maybe not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that made my heart sink a little bit when it was very clear that it was going to be Moyes is, Sir Alex leaving is kind of a massive blow to all of us in terms of just the raw emotion of it. But also, there has been this talk of big signings coming in. David Moyes' first signing at Manchester United as Cristiano Ronaldo is kind of a weird sentence to say compared to Sir Alex brings Cristiano home. You remember when John Major took over from Mrs. Thatcher and she said, oh, of course I'm going to be a backseat driver. And there's the Steve Bell cartoon of her holding the steering wheel while sat in the back seat. And you do wonder what the relationship's going to be like. How hands-on is Sir Alex going to be? He's still going to be around, so he's still part of the appeal to Ronnie. But who knows? I mean, seriously, it's all just random speculation, isn't it? Right, so to mark the occasion, we've got a giveaway. At Anton Alfie, purveyor of fine videos and also responsible for the graphic design on the Not 19 Forever banner, has designed a new t-shirt for the occasion, a nice Sir Alex Ferguson. It says, well done, Alex, and it's got all the trophies, and well done being, of course, his favourite mark of praise. Well done. So I'm sure it says at the end of interviews, which I love. Anyway, it's a really cool t-shirt. And in order to win one of those for absolutely free, all you need to do is answer the question why you'd be a better Manchester United manager than David Moyes. Why we should take you, and if you can get that into 140 characters in a tweet and use the hashtag Rantcast so it doesn't get all lost, then submit your entries that way and we'll pick a winner next week. In the meantime, follow at Anton Alfie on Twitter to have a look for his excellent t-shirts. There's a very cool Robin Van Persie one, and really nice That's Why I Love United one, made out of all the different names of United players over the years, and a Not 19 Forever 20 times t-shirt based on that banner. It's pretty cool. I have to say that banner looks pretty good. Unlike Man United on Sunday, I mean, what can we say about that game except United didn't care?
I think given everything that's happened this week, it really doesn't matter anymore.
No.
I was actually, I have to say, you mentioned some people were quite angry. I was quite angry because I felt that cheated the fans, that kind of performance, because I thought it was a very odd team selection and a remarkably complacent performance. And as much as you can say, I understand it, they've won the league, it mattered not a jot. They still had a responsibility to entertain the fans, in my view, and I thought that was incredibly arrogant and complacent of them to perform in that manner. But hey, look, it doesn't matter. In the big scale of things, it's done. Right, it's done, but I was pretty angry about that one, and that's not being spoiled. I just thought the fans deserve more than this, and it was rubbish. It was really, really awful. It really doesn't matter because it's been blown out of the water by all the other stuff this week, Ferguson's retirement, Moyes' appointment, and we've only recorded about 4 hours of this podcast, so I suppose we ought to dedicate at least 30 seconds preview to the game coming up. Of course, it won't be the game that really matters, will it, at the weekend? It'll be Ferguson's departure speech that everyone is waiting for.
I can't believe it. I'm really annoyed, by the way, because I was definitely going to get one of the many spares that were going to be going around for the West Brom away game the week after, and now that's just not going to... I'm going to have to resign myself to the fact that that is not going to happen. So, by the way, if you've got a spare, right, and you're not motivated by finance, and you just want to let me go for face value, just drop us a message on Twitter. But that's obviously not going to happen because they're going for 600 quid a ticket or something already. But the Swansea game, yeah, we'll play Swansea. I mean, it's just going to be such an insanely emotional occasion, isn't it? There's been a lot of making fun of football's more maudlin side and minutes applauses and all that kind of stuff, but this is just going to be an absolute emotion fest, and so it darn well should be.
We are having a minute's silence. Scouse style. You know what would have been the best troll of all? Appointing Rafa Benitez. Just for a day, just to watch Liverpool melt. I mean, literally, the city would have melted and sunk into the earth. And then we could have sacked him.
Yeah, that would have been quite fun. We are appointing the Everton manager, which is fairly sort of troll-tastic, isn't it?
It's pretty good on the troll front, yeah.
The only person that I actually think is like, okay, this is the person that I can see makes the most sense in world football and it actually makes sense, like for our benefit, would have been Klopp because of what he's done over the last number of years at Dortmund. I mean, he's not like some hipster flash in the pan as some people seem to perceive him as, but he has built kind of one of the most exciting dynamic teams in world football from scratch based on youth and super attacking football.
Not with loads of money either, and because Dortmund don't generate loads of money, and he won 2 German titles and has got them to the European Cup final. Might still win a European Cup, I think it was just too left field for United.
Yeah, and I also don't think he wanted to go. That's the other thing. I think he's happy with Project Dortmund.
Yeah, although Project Dortmund's going to get dismantled, so this would have been the right time to go if he had the ambition to go elsewhere. But I'm quite sure United didn't even test that one because I think I think they had their eyes on Moyes, given that Jose is going back to Chelsea. That's going to be an interesting challenge, isn't it? I mean, next season, I know we got off the Swansea game already because it's just, it's a little bit small fry, isn't it? In compared to the big stuff that's going on. But next season's going to be really interesting because City are going to spend offensively in the summer because Mancini's jumped up and down about it if they don't sack him, of course. And they'll probably spend offensively even if they do sack him. Mourinho will go back. He'll get plenty of budget. Saw it in the Mirror today saying that Rooney is going to Chelsea, or Chelsea are trying to hijack that one. United might well be prepared to sell.
If they do sell Rooney, they need to make a big transfer. Because, imagine Fergie goes, Rooney goes, nobody significant comes in. It's just going to completely melt. There's going to be meltdown, isn't there? Talking about Liverpool melting, United will melt.
Well, there would be certainly, in the Twitter sphere, I suppose, but also it'd be undermining Moyes straight away. I mean, Moyes and Rooney can't be in the same team. Even if for some reason United don't sell Rooney this summer because they don't get the right kind of bid, he's got to go at some point. This is not a relationship that can work functionally. So, who knows what his personal transfer targets are, or what views he has on, or whether he has any say in it at all. We don't know what the structure will be.
Oh, David Moyes' personal transfer targets for Man United. I wonder if he'll bring anyone from Everton. And Baines and Fellaini makes kind of sense, but
In many senses, I really hope that Fellaini isn't signed because I think that attracts long ball football.
Yeah.
He doesn't play in central midfield anyway. I know we've talked about him and he's put in some stunning performances against United. I don't think he's the right one for United. Baines, well, maybe, but Patrice Evra has just come off the back of his best season since 2009. So I think there's more mileage there still. And so I don't think that's a priority. If there's money to spend, I'm not sure you want to spend 15 million on Leighton Baines right now. I think you'd spend it in central midfield.
No, absolutely.
Of course, Moyes' central midfield at Everton right now is Gibson and Pip Neville. They could do a job there, don't you think?
No doubt. Yeah, alright, so this is it then. Next week, penultimate Rantcast of the season. Hopefully there'll have been a week of crazy transfer activity and speculation and stuff for us to talk about. And then we'll do end of season award thing. It's just been a hell of a weird day, and whatever happens, they're Man United, aren't they? Biggest incredible club. I mean, success for the future isn't guaranteed, but being Man United is, and that's kind of wonderful in itself, We'll see what the post-Ferguson era brings. It was always going to be incredibly difficult transition. I mean, if you look at the transition outside the Busby era, it took until Sir Alex took over for that to really be finished, and it was 2.5 decades. And hopefully it won't be that long.
Right.
And in modern football, you'd expect it not to be, because there's a certain established power structure which puts United in an incredibly strong position compared to where they were in the 70s.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, completely agree with that. United is set up to succeed. Whether the new managerial appointment is the right one or not, really. I mean, but I think that it might just be the difference between success in a highly competitive environment and not. But I don't think United are going to slump to the slump that United suffered after Busby. There's no chance of the club getting relegated in the next 5 years. I don't think.
No, it seems really unlikely. And also, one thing we didn't say is Sir Alex is leaving the squad in really good shape. There is a really good balance.
Yeah, really good shape. I mean, not the best in Europe, but in very good shape.
Yeah, and in fact, and I'm sure this wasn't deliberate, but the fact that there is room to grow. I was thinking about, Moyes signs a central midfielder, and everyone's going to be like, oh, brilliant. And it's like, it was just an elaborate scam of Fergie to kind of get the fans on side for the next manager, just not buy a central midfielder all this time. So like, Dad isn't going to buy you the toy you want so that stepdad can buy it, pretend new dad can buy it and he can endear himself to you.
And Moyes starts with a clean slate. He has no loyalties to any of these players, so it'll be interesting to see what he sees as his first 11. And of course, there'll be massive egg on our faces if the media are trolling us completely and Jose pops out and announces himself as United manager on Thursday. In which case, I'm deleting this rantcast and we'll record it all again.
But assuming that doesn't happen and you have just heard all this, you can get me at UTD Rantcast, you can get Ed at United Rant, get us both at unitedrant.co.uk or facebook.com/UnitedRant. And if you really enjoyed the show, leave a review on iTunes, that'd be much appreciated. Incredible shout out to one particular listener who hopefully knows who he is. People have been extremely generous donating what they can to unitedrant.co.uk/donate, but we got a very kind donation from a listener, so thank you. Well, thank you to absolutely everyone who's donated, sincerely.
I'm very generous. I mean, we don't help out starving kids in Africa unless they're able to get iTunes, in which case we give them much oral pleasure.
Absolutely, and we'll be back at the same time next week to talk about David Moyes' Red and White Army. David Moyes' Red and White Army.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.